Pooh Shiesty has had a pretty wild year. Besides going viral and becoming one of the biggest rappers in the game, he's also been involved in multiple shootings and robberies that may put him behind bars for a while. Now, Pooh is facing a federal indictment for a shooting that happened in Florida at the end of last year, and the feds are using his own Instagram as evidence in the case. Let's take a closer look at what's going on with this case, and if he has any chance at this point. Pooh Shiesty is currently facing charges related to two separate shootings. The first happened in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, back in October 2020, and the other happened in Miami over Memorial Day weekend. The rapper was originally let out on bail for the first shooting, but after he was arrested in Miami, the judge from the first case revoked his bond, which means he'll be sitting in jail until the trial.
New at 5:30, a popular rapper arrested. He's accused of shooting a security guard at a South Florida gentleman's club and will remain behind bars. A judge denied bond for 21-year-old Lontrell Williams, known as Pooh Shiesty.
Then, on June 29th, the rapper appeared in federal court to face charges for discharging a firearm during a violent crime, conspiracy, and robbery. An affidavit filed at the beginning of June states that Shiesty, along with two associates named Bobby Brown and Jaden DeRosa, pulled into the parking lot of the Landon Hotel in Bay Harbor Islands with the intentions of meeting two people to purchase high-end sneakers and some weed. It also states that both Pooh and Brown then pulled out weapons and shot both victims. Brown allegedly shot one of the victims in the hip, while Shiesty shot the other in the The victims were able to make it to the hospital and were both treated for their injuries. At the hospital, they gave statements that didn't line up, with one saying they were there to sell Shiesty a pair of Jordans, while the other claimed they were there to sell him some weed and collect a payment for a green McLaren that they were renting to him, the same one he was driving during the shooting. One of the victims also told police that while he was in the car with Shiesty, two men approached them with guns and the rapper told him to get out. When he got out and started walking away, Shiesty allegedly shot him with a Draco from inside the McLaren. The other victim was walking back to his car when he heard gunshots go off and realized he had been hit. He then looked up and saw Shiesty holding the Draco with the car door open and heard the rapper say, "Don't try it, don't try it." What was even more confusing was that investigators later found a Louis Vuitton bag in the parking lot that had $40,000 cash inside it. Security camera footage revealed that it had fallen out of the McLaren as it was driving away. Prosecutors were later able to link the money to Pooh Shiesty using photos from his own Instagram. The whole thing went down in broad daylight, right in front of a security camera. So, it didn't take much to tie the rapper to the scene, but the victims' versions of events didn't quite add up.
Bullets fly in broad daylight. Two people shot and over $500,000 in exotic cars, all of it caught on camera. This surveillance video is from an October 9th shooting in Bay Harbor Islands, and it has a recording artist who goes by Pooh Shiesty in hot water.
First of all, they both gave different stories of why they were meeting with the rapper in the first place. Second, if it was an alleged robbery, then why would the rapper leave behind $40,000 cash on the ground? And third, why would Shiesty tell him not to try anything if they were completely innocent? It seems like maybe the two victims may have made a move to try and hit a lick on the rapper and his crew, or they felt like something sketchy was going down and spazzed out. It seems unlikely that Shiesty and his crew would plan on robbing these two dudes for some weed and a pair of sneakers in the middle of the day when they clearly had enough money to pay. Although Pooh Shiesty wasn't quite as big at the time as he is now, he was still a well-known rapper, and it doesn't seem likely that he would just start letting off shots unless he really needed to. But then again, Pooh Shiesty's a wild dude, and it's tough to tell exactly what happened that day just based on the current evidence. Shiesty was arrested for armed robbery with a firearm, among other charges, and was later released on a $30,000 bond. Besides the surveillance footage taken from the scene of the crime, authorities have relied heavily on social media evidence to make their case. So, it seems like Shiesty's IG flexing may lead to his downfall. Photos posted to the rapper's IG showed him flexing with the green McLaren, just like the one seen in the security footage, as well as a gun that matches the description of the Draco he allegedly had on the day of the shooting. But what's most damaging is the money that police found on the scene of the crime. They were able to match the serial numbers of the cash found in the Louis Vuitton bag to stacks of cash that Shiesty can be seen flexing on IG. Just like every gun or a car, each dollar bill has its own unique serial number that can be used to identify the cash if it's used in a crime. So if someone robs a bank or an ATM, the police can use the serial numbers to catch a suspect if they try to buy something with that money. In this case, the cops had the actual cash and were able to zoom in on Shiesty's IG photos and tie him to the scene of the crime. They matched the serial number of the bills and his IG photos to the money left in the parking lot. So there's no doubt that Shiesty was at the scene of the crime, and this case will depend on whether or not he acted in self-defense. Initially, the case didn't look that difficult to beat. The dudes he met up with were clearly involved in some street business themselves if they were selling weed and sneakers to a rapper, and there are a lot of holes in their story that a good lawyer could point out. But the case got a bit tougher once Shiesty was arrested for an entirely different shooting in Miami. On Memorial Day weekend, Shiesty was performing at the King of Diamonds strip club. Rumors started to circulate online during the show that Pooh Shiesty had been robbed and was looking for the person who did it. Sources later revealed that Shiesty had been walking around the club with stacks of money spilling out of his pockets. Someone bumped into him, and all the money spilled out onto the ground, and people in the crowd snatched it up before he even realized it. After noticing his money was gone, Shiesty pulled out his pistol and was captured on camera leaving the club with the gun in his hand. As he was leaving, Pooh allegedly let off a shot that hit a security guard in the foot. The security guard claims that he had to dive out of the way to avoid getting hit and could have easily lost his life. Check out our video on Pooh Shiesty robbed, then shot security guard for a full breakdown of this case. Pooh would then be arrested and granted bail for that case, but would have his bond revoked for the previous shooting in Bay Harbor Islands because he violated the terms of that bond.
New at 6, Lontrell Williams, also known as rapper Pooh Shiesty, will remain in jail for now. Williams was arrested for an incident at a South Florida gentleman's club where he's accused of shooting a security guard.
But in a crazy twist, the security guard would end up retracting his statement and claim that he doesn't know who fired the shot.
That man is now recanting his story and telling investigators he doesn't remember being shot by Williams.
Authorities are currently investigating Shiesty and those around him for potentially tampering with the witness. At first, the security guard was pretty clear that the rapper was the one who shot him in the foot and that he feared for his life, but now he doesn't want to talk. It could be that someone from Chopper Gang or 1017 paid a visit to the security guard and let him know what might happen if he cooperated with authorities. Or maybe the club didn't want to lose its credibility with rappers by having one of the staff members cooperating with police, and they convinced the security guard to keep his mouth shut. After all, they did already mess up by letting Pooh Shiesty sneak a gun into their club in the first place and failing to keep their own staff safe, and probably didn't want all the bad publicity. So that's a potential positive for the rapper's case, although this new Fed indictment doesn't help. The feds have an extremely high conviction rate, and it's unlikely that they would have got involved in the case unless they had solid evidence to back it up. Instagram account Lawyer for Workers broke down why it was a federal charge and not a state charge. The account is run by an NYC-based employment attorney who often posts about cases involving famous rappers and celebrities like Pooh Shiesty. According to him, because it was a robbery committed during a potential drug transaction, that gives the feds jurisdiction over the case if they choose to pursue it. If this were just a normal drug deal gone wrong, they likely wouldn't pay attention and leave it up to the state. But because it involves a high-profile rapper, they likely picked it up to set an example for other popular artists who are out there really living that life. Pooh Shiesty isn't the only high-profile rapper to get hit with the Fed charge. NBA Youngboy is also facing some serious time after being arrested on gun charges late last year.
The rapper's attorney argues his client never had possession of the weapons or drugs because he doesn't own any of the cars on the scene.
Unlike Shiesty, Youngboy is a repeat felon, which also gives the feds jurisdiction to step in and take the case. It seems like they're attempting to crack down on any rappers who want to keep messing around with the streets even after they become famous, and will use all tactics at their disposal to force a conviction. Although Shiesty is facing some serious charges, it's not exactly 100% yet. There's still a lot that doesn't make sense about the day of the shooting, and it'll be tough for prosecutors to prove that the robbery and shooting were planned. If Pooh Shiesty was already a convicted felon, he'd be done for sure because he was clearly in possession of a firearm. But Florida is a gun-friendly state, and as long as the weapon was purchased legally, he's allowed to carry it for protection. Florida also has a stand your ground law, so if Shiesty's legal team can prove that the victims made him feel threatened, he could beat the case. Since the victim told police that Shiesty told him not to try anything during the shooting, could be used as evidence that the shooting was in self-defense. Pooh Shiesty has enough money and connections in the industry to hire the best defense team possible, which is another thing in his favor. He's already hired the famous lawyer Bradford Cohen, who has defended a long list of other rappers and athletes. Some of his past clients include DMX, Dennis Rodman, YNW Melly, Plexico Burris, and NLE Choppa. He also represented Lil Wayne and Kodak Blac for gun charges and was the one who negotiated a pardon for both artists from former President Donald Trump. So, Cohen is the guy you need for this type of case. Check out our video on rappers pardoned for their crimes for more info on rappers who got pardoned. Anyways, it's definitely not game over for Pooh Shiesty, but the indictment would certainly slow down his career. Part of the reason that Fed cases have such a high conviction rate is that they tend to force a lot of plea deals. It seems likely that Shiesty's lawyers may try and go that route if they want to make sure Pooh doesn't get locked up for a while. It would be surprising if Pooh Shiesty walked away without any jail time or at least getting hit with probation, although anything is possible. The crazy thing is that even if Shiesty does get locked up, he could come back in a few years more popular than ever. Hopefully, he has a bunch of songs on a hard drive somewhere that Gucci can release to feed the streets if he gets locked up. Gucci himself went away for several years and came back better than ever. Although, the Trap God was already a hip-hop legend at that point, and Shiesty is still on the come-up, so only time will tell whether this case will ruin his career or make him hotter than ever. Pooh Shiesty is the perfect example of a rapper who keeps it too real. He said on Back in Blood, "I got my own fire, don't need security in the club," and he really meant it. But while his gangster image might increase his popularity, It's also led him to make mistakes that have cost him money and momentum in his career. The fact that the feds were able to use his own Instagram against him shows that being a famous rapper and a criminal is not easy to pull off these days. The feds are monitoring everything and just waiting for rappers to make a wrong move. Hopefully, this is a wake-up call to Shiesty and he can leave the streets alone for good, or at least have his chopper gang goons hold down the streets while focusing on rapping. The sad part is that both situations seem preventable if Pooh didn't feel the need to live the life that he raps about. If he had let the security guard hold the gun or sent his people to go buy him some weed and sneakers instead of pulling up with the Draco, he wouldn't have been in this situation with all these charges and lawyers. But he's part of this new generation of rappers that has to prove they're still about that life, even while they're making millions of dollars legally. The best thing for Shiesty to do is keep his head down and take a lesson from his mentor Gucci Mane on how to change your ways and still get respect from the streets. It's definitely not over for Pooh Shiesty, but if he doesn't learn from his mistakes, it's gonna be a long time behind bars.